And
Patricia Castillo with eXp Realty.
we're here today for our home buyer seminar that we do every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, where we talk about all things about buying a home, primarily your first home or upgrading your home. And today, Patricia brought some friends with her along. Patricia, go ahead.
So yes, everybody, thank you for being here today. Our special guest today is Anthony Valencia with Old Republic Title Company and also Debi Kroman. And we'd like to welcome you to the call. So say hello.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Everyone.
So Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and how you got started in title insurance.
Oh, that's a long story.
You have a few minutes, so condense the information.
So I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay.
Been in title for 33 years now.
Wow.
Been with Old Republic for 16.
Awesome. It's a long time.
Yeah.
In San Gabriel Valley, what part?
Valinda.
Okay.
So Valinda, La Puente.
That is San Gabriel Valley. Okay,
Yep.
There you go. I'm not going to question that. You're right there in the middle of it. Very nice.
Yep.
I grew up in La Habra Heights over the hill.
Okay.
But started working Diamond Bar in real estate. Though I also covered kind of over the hill, Hacienda Heights, and then over the hill into Whittier. So that's where I kind of straddled those two lines in my first career before I moved to West Los Angeles. So guys, our topic today, our program today is about home buying, and it's interesting that when you talk to a first-time buyer and say you're buying a house, and they think about the things that are important to them, they're going to name off, the location and the layout and the lighting and the plumbing, electrical, and the last thing they would ever expect to pay for is something called title insurance. Yet, because you're in the business, you know how important it is. How do you explain to your friends or family when they ask you what you do and they give you glassy eyes? How do you explain why people pay for title insurance when they buy a house?
Debbie, you want to run with this, or you want me to take it from
No,
here?
Anthony, I'm gonna let you. I can articulate, but I think you might do a better job than I do. But
Okay. Basically what we do as a title insurer is we insure your property from the time of closing that you're getting free and clear title to the property, that there's not going to be any liens or judgments from any previous owners. So we basically insure from the point you buy it backwards. We don't insure forwards. We cover depending on the certain situations, but that, there's different aspects of that. So us as an insurance company, we're going to run the report. We're going to pull up everything that's currently against the property or against the current owner, and make sure that everything's paid off at closing and you're getting free and clear title.
So when I talk to customers and practically speaking, when they buy a property and they hear, well, the seller lost the property in foreclosure, or I do a lot in probate, well, the seller's selling the house through probate, should I worry about the liens and I want to check this and that? And there might be a string of liens. What I tell them is, well, that you have to worry about that because you're paying for an insurance policy, and they're going to make sure all those liens are gone, or else they're not going to insure the property. And so what you're really doing is, I think, giving the buyer peace of mind that whatever happened before they close escrow, that within reason, I guess, there's exceptions like to everything in life, but basically whatever happened before on title that was the seller's responsibility won't be theirs. Is that a fair way to put it?
That is correct. And if something were to arise, just say a deed of trust, records a couple days after we close, but it's dated, the previous owner signed it a month ago. It just, maybe they mailed it in, didn't get recorded through a title company. Us as a title company, we're going to defend you as the buyer,
right?
And we're going to make it right. We're either going to have to pay that deed of trust and go after the previous seller, or work on getting a recon or whatever the case may be.
And just to share how important it is, I work a special niche of property, which are sheriff sales. Unlike normal foreclosures that are sold at the county steps, sheriff sales are called judicial foreclosures. Somebody sues somebody, and the judge orders the sale of a property. Those properties do not come with title insurance, interesting enough. The sheriff deeds the property. The sheriff says, hey, the court ordered it and we sold it to you and you own it, but they're not going to talk about what happened before. And that same property that might sell for $800,000 without title insurance will sell for about $560 because of the risk associated with potential litigation. So when a buyer buys a property, you're really performing an important, yet I think underappreciated process to protect the buyer. Another part where it comes up, in my experience, is on, well, what is the property, right? It's one thing to be in the house, but I imagine a lot of your issues are not the house, but the boundary lines, right? The classic case that I've been involved with is there's a fence in it. They discover, oh, your fence is over my property line. You need to tear down the fence. How's title insurance involved with the boundaries of property or easements or things like that? What are the most common issues that come up to you?
Common issues mainly have to do with probably encroachments. On our prelim, we're going to report out any type of recorded easements against the property. But if there's a boundary line issue, your neighbor builds his fence 5 feet onto your property, really, unless we send out an inspector or if there's anything recorded, we don't know about it. If it does come up, the homeowner's policy that you're purchasing does cover issues like that. And, that's when us as an insurance company will get involved after the closing to make it right.
Right.
But just a caveat on that, there is a limitation to how much we cover on those specific kind of issues in our policy.
Correct.
And that's true with any title company.
Now, one of the terms you used, I'm familiar with, is easement. So an easement is basically when somebody else has the right to use property, maybe most commonly a driveway, right? A driveway that goes maybe over the side of your property to go back to their property. And so typically in a preliminary title report, when you buy a property after the contract's signed, before you close escrow, one of the processes is you get a report from the title company, and that includes a map and describes, as you said, easements. But I know there's certain types of easements that can cause a little question, like, well, who's in charge of this? What has to be done about that? Can you share with me any kind of experiences where you have private roads or easements or disputes or things like that?
Every property is unique. No two properties are alike. You have your easements for ingress and egress for utility companies, for, power companies, water companies, phone companies. But then you have that shared driveway with the neighbor. And sometimes a lot of those shared driveways aren't recorded. It could be a handshake. Hey, let's knock down this fence and build one big driveway. So it all depends on the situation recorded against the property and what's there and what's not there.
Yeah, I know oftentimes our buyers will look at it and say, oh my gosh, the power company has the right to come on my property. Yeah, those are their power poles, right?
Yeah.
Another question I get from new buyers also is about mineral rights. Very commonly in California, most of our property at one point was oil property. I think if you really look at a map and old pictures, you'll just see huge tracts of lands with oil wells all over the place, certainly the LA area. And when they sold the property, they didn't include the mineral rights because they could, I guess, drill underneath the property and take the oil or whatever they did. Have you ever had any disputes on that? Have you ever had a customer come back and have an issue where they had oil rights? And I know other properties, they do get some leases. Have you ever been involved in those kind of issues?
Yeah, we see them often, where the owner from the 60s has retained the oil rights or the rights to the lease and royalties and stuff like that. It all depends on the area, on where you're at. Closer to Long Beach and all that, there's a lot like that. And then down, LA, there's a lot. But over here, in the valleys, there's really not a lot of oil, issues.
Very common in Long Beach and Signal Hill area. And if you look at the history of California and the history of oil, it's amazing how big a role Long Beach and Signal Hill in particular had. There's a famous book on that by Sinclair Lewis, and it really centered on Long Beach and Bakersfield as well, but Long Beach and Signal Hill. Well, great. Well, Patricia, I know when you get customers and they buy their house, I'm sorry, they get their offer accepted. They haven't bought the house yet. That's when the investigations start. Have you ever had a buyer look at the preliminary report and say, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty confusing for a first-time home buyer, that's new to the process, and they see the CCNRs and they see the easements, and those are the typical things that run with the property. So, we do explain all that to them. And I also explain how, as you were saying, Anthony, you're basically covering the past ownership for the property. So the title company is responsible for connecting all the dots for the prior ownership. And from being in escrow before, those are the types of things that we most commonly saw, were the missing link between somebody that was transferring their title from, let's say, their individual status to maybe a trust or an entity. Then we send out the statement of information, and then now we have a spouse. So now we have to deal, with the spouse and their potential interest in the property.
Sure.
You have a little one.
So, yeah. And so, these are just all interesting things that come up, and that first-time home buyers are, it's a good thing for them to know up front. If you're going to do any type of title changes, make sure that you're accounting for, your spouse in that process. And the other thing that we saw quite commonly was the private loans that just never got reconveyed. They were paid off, but never got reconveyed. And chasing down the private lender to get the lien release, the reconveyance signed and finally recorded. So in many instances, we did have to go through a bond company to bond around that deed of trust that was never taken off the title. So yes, it is very, extensive, all the information that's contained in the title chain, but I think it's really important for, us as agents to know how to read a title report and go over it with our clients, especially first-time home buyers.
And one thing I just want to add, because of Patricia's escrow background, she's a great resource to be able to help buyers navigate those issues on a preliminary report. And so
Debbie, how long have we known each other?
a long time, yeah.
We won't date each other on the call.
I know, but she brings up a good point. One of the things we're seeing a lot lately, and I see it probably a little bit more on the commercial side because there's seller carrybacks, where there's a private beneficiary deed of trust that doesn't get reconveyed. And it could be 20 years old, but from a title perspective, we still look at that and say, we don't know if it was paid off. We need to feel comfortable with it and do the proper steps to try to find who that beneficiary is and get a reconveyance. Otherwise, to your point, we'd have to bond around it.
Right.
Yeah, and so this is just to kind of clarify a little bit. So you're talking about a case where somebody lends somebody money, and they secure their interest by recording a deed on the property. So the property gets sold, they get paid off. Before selling the property, the loan gets paid back. So the party writes the check, and they're both happy. They shake hands and they walk away.
Right.
But if you have such a lien on your property, you need to also get them to reconvey, to file a document that says that lien has been extinguished. Otherwise, you run the risk of having to still pay it or hold up
Right.
your transaction. And that's why the statement, especially on the seller side, and this is the part that's, why do so many times sellers specify the title? Because they're the ones with the most, I think, at risk and work that has to be done for the title, and they want to make sure they're going to get good service to clear those things. I work in probate a lot, and there's a lot of cases where, I have a case right now. Grandma had a trust. Grandma deeded out of the trust. Grandma died. Bad person is controlling the trust. And granddaughter, I said to her, well, if grandma deeded out of the trust, good for you. Now you just go to probate and you control the property. But sometimes, these documents get done but never get recorded. And it's important, and that's where title kind of sorts these things out, where these things get kind of worked out. Describe a little bit, Anthony or Debbie, like what's your role in the business? Because, to a buyer, they just see a closing statement and, oh my gosh, I'm paying for what? What the heck is this? I never even heard of these people. Unbeknownst to them, you've been spending hours behind the scene, making phone calls and calling Patricia and explaining what to do and cleaning up a problem. Kind of describe your role in the process, if you would.
So I'll chime in first. I'm the marketing person, so I'm the liaison with somebody like Patricia. So she'll reach out to me and say, would you work with me and my buyer or seller for that matter? And the title officer, we're questioning some of these fees that are on there. And so I work with the units to try to work with the principals of buyers and the sellers to explain and articulate what those are and what they mean exactly.
When we say marketing, do you also do outreach to like real estate agents to generate business? Is that part of your role as well?
Right, right. So I solicit working with agents. I also work with lenders, attorneys. So to your point, probate, I've worked with probate attorneys.
Oh, and so explain to me why might a real estate agent choose to work with you? No, I know your company. I know the answers, but just since we're videoing here and want to share with other people who are watching, why might a real estate agent choose to work with you and your company rather than another company?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, it's just I'm extremely dedicated to my craft and my 35 years of being in the business. I've seen a lot of situations and I know how to navigate to get the deals closed, and people trust me. We all sell the same product and our fees are pretty much the same for the most part. So it's a matter of establishing a relationship with somebody that you know has got your back when it comes to closing the transaction.
Got it. And I think that the relationship with you is underutilized. In my experience as a real estate agent, I literally did a video today on the importance of picking the right title company and getting them to do their job. And it's not, the old days it used to be title reps would come by and drop off cookies or whatever. Now you can't give gifts and a lot of those things are restricted. With COVID, we don't even see each other. All there's left to do is roll up your sleeves and help us close deals. Hey, I'm all for that. So,
Yeah.
Well, good. And so if a real estate agent was interested in working with you, Debbie, they would reach out to you directly. Anthony, what's your role in the title business?
Currently, right now, I'm the operations manager for our Los Angeles branch.
Uh-huh.
I was previously a title officer. So, I dealt with the escrows, the agents, the sales reps, and, helped facilitate getting these deals closed.
And now you oversee the title officers, or what's your role?
Now I oversee the title officers and the operations.
Oh, wow. And how many title officers report to you?
I have 2 residential, and I work sometimes with the 2 commercial as well.
Wow, I didn't realize you're all that, Anthony. Okay, I thought you were just the eye candy in this call. Wow, good to know.
So if we're talking to Anthony, somebody's in trouble.
Probably. You're not calling Anthony if everything's going well. You're calling Debbie and going out for drinks or something. But if you're talking to Anthony, some document's missing. And you're trying to get him to try to accept what you have. What do you see, Anthony? You must, through your operations and experience, must see real estate agents and buyers who get great service and things go through smoothly. You must see problems. You go, gosh, if they only done this ahead of time, we wouldn't be in this position. What do you see as the differentiator and helping people be successful on a transaction versus those that stumble? Maybe.
Honestly, I think it's organization. Anytime you get any type of real estate record or forms from the counties or anything like that, hold on to those things. To go back to your point about old deeds of trust and private Benny deeds of trust, a lot of those private Bennies, they would sign the back of the deed of trust for the request for reconveyance and just give it back to the owner, not knowing that they had to send it to the trustee or the title company and have them process the sub and recon. Right. So we've had, or even back in the day, the lenders would mail the original reconveyance to you.
Right.
So I had one experience where, there was an old deed of trust from 1965 and the person was a real estate agent. His parents had died, but they kept all of their records. So he goes, you know what? Let me look through the records. He pulls out this recon from 1972, still original recon. And I was like, I need it. I got to record it. Yeah. And I was able to record it through the file and that cleared that up. So that's my biggest thing is, hold on to whatever you get pertaining to your property, because, you never know down the line, you might need that. Even like if for refinance purposes, you do, if they give you a closing statement, hold on to that closing statement, because sometimes we might need that closing statement to see that something was paid off, to make us feel a little bit more comfortable about an older document that's never been reconveyed.
On a little different angle, I'm sure you must see this a lot. I work mostly probate, and there's a common experience that not enough people have estate plans and living trusts. Anybody who owns a house should have one, in my opinion. But too many that do go to a service or an attorney and get the world's greatest estate plan, but they never deed the property into the trust. It's kind of like buying a safe for all your valuables at your house. You put the safe and you get it installed in your closet, you hide it really well, but you don't put your valuables in the safe. And so, you must see this. You must see these deeds that are, and then the attorneys have to go through a process which is called the Hegstead petition here in California to try to get it put back into the trust. Do you accommodate recordings when buyers have or owners of property have properties that they deed out of the trust, they meant it to be back in the trust? Is that something you accommodate? Or do you guys have an escrow department that can prepare those documents, or if they prepare them and sign them, do you record them for them, or are they pretty much on their own to get that done?
It all depends on the situation, really. I mean, we do have an escrow department, but I mean, if you're dealing with another, like an outside escrow, it'd probably be best to go through them, have them help facilitate that issue. But we have, let's just say you're doing a refi, take it out of the trust into the individuals, put it back into the trust after the closing, we'll accommodate with recording of docs and stuff like that. Us as a title like unit or title department, we don't prepare documents. That's more of an escrow function.
But your escrow does. I think that's one of the things, to me, I always wondered, why don't people use more the title company's escrow? Because I could then say, you guys figure it out. We're paying both of you. I don't really care who does it. Just get the document done and record it and charge a fair fee for that. But we need to get it done at some point. Debbie, you're looking confused, Debbie. What did I say that you don't think?
It's interesting, because Northern California is totally different than Southern California. Northern California, title and escrow are all in together.
Yes.
In Southern California, you have independent escrow companies, so it kind of operates a little bit differently.
Yes. Yeah, and I think there's some advantages to both. But for me personally, the broker-owned escrow, I think, is just a mess. I mean, it's only a mess in that, as long as they don't make mistakes, it's not a problem. But they make mistakes so often, and in my experience, the service is subpar. So I always negotiate out of the broker-owned escrows. And I always wonder, well, if you use independent, why not use a title company? I mean, that way there's no he said, she said. You guys have the document. One of you has it. Record it. Do whatever you need to do. And yeah, I always find the reps to be. I understand it. They they don't want to be responsible. It's tough work. It's thankless work. The escrows. I know Patricia used to work at a title company. Here I'm having this conversation. You used to work at a title company escrow department, didn't you?
I did. Absolutely. And
There's a ton of
worked
deals.
with Debi back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you
so
work
we
at
did
or
see-
Public, or did she work at? You were at a different company, right?
It was actually at North American Title,
There you go.
Yeah, we were at
which
North
is no
American
longer North American Title anymore. It's now DOMA.
Doma. Yeah, we did see a lot of this happening where certain companies might have closed down already, especially if they were, an independently owned escrow company. They had closed down, and so it was really hard to backtrack and try to, sometimes we're playing FBI, or detective, and we're trying to backtrack and find information. I actually went as far as going to a restaurant in person because we found out that the daughter of a private Benny owned a restaurant here where I live near Downey. And so I kept calling the daughter to try to get her to sign the reconveyance and set up the notary and have the mother sign the reconveyance. But the daughter was so protective, she would not let us speak to her mother because she was an elderly woman and this loan was so old. Her mother kept saying she has no recollection of it. So I physically had to go to the restaurant to try to talk to the daughter to let her know what this situation was about and show her the title report because she wasn't returning our calls. She wasn't, answering our emails. And I was trying to just reassure her. And so you know, in that case, I mean, it is better to use a reputable title company, such as Old Republic, you know, and a company that's been around for many years that can really stand behind their title
1907, 1907.
1907.
Before I was born.
I know.
I'm always glad when a company is older than me. I just feel like that's just an important milestone to pay attention to. It's Old Republic. It's not New Republic. It's not Young Republic. It's not Young and Fresh Republic. It's old. I don't know why you emphasize the old part, because it makes me feel old. Well, look, I know today's topic is a little detailed and technical. I think the thing that I'd like a buyer who maybe says, what the heck is all this about, is there's a lot of people behind the scenes, and you'll see a fee for title insurance. You should feel free to ask your agent what it's about. But if you have questions, feel free to put in the chat box or raise your hand in the Zoom call. I don't suspect we'll have as much interaction here. I do know that we use the term private Benny, and that would be the beneficiary of a loan. They're the person who's going to get paid the money at some point. And so, but other than that, I think it was a little technical today. But you know, I think it was important that you hear the topic. You might need to see it and touch it a few times before you really understand it. Anybody have any questions that we can help with here? We have a operations manager over at Title Officers and a marketing rep for a title company. Anybody have any questions? I don't see anything. Patricia, any last questions you have for Tony and Debbie while we have them?
Yeah, I think for, you know, our viewers that are primarily looking to purchase or possibly already own and maybe purchasing a secondary home, what type of rates are, you know, are there any, or I should say, are there any rates that are geared towards first-time home buyers? As far as, I know if you once you buy, you refi within like 5 years, you get a short-term rate, which is a discounted rate. But are there any rates that are specifically for first-time home buyers?
No, we're pretty regulated when it comes to, you know, the single family market. So
Mhm.
all of the title companies' fees are filed with the Department of Insurance.
Right.
And there aren't any special fees for first-time home buyers or somebody who's owned their property for 20 years. So
Okay, good.
Yeah, they're an insurance company, which means that their fees are highly regulated. We as agents can always try and negotiate credits, whether it be from commissions or from the seller, pay closing costs. It's very common. A smart agent will, to help the buyer get a little further in the deal, maybe raise the sales price by $5,000, but if the seller pay $5,000 of the closing cost, it's the same price, but it's a little less money out of pocket for the buyer. And so that's something, if you're interested in, talk to Patricia and she can show you how those numbers work to your advantage to make it feel cheaper, but it's going to be the same cost either way. Well, look, Anthony and Debbie, thank you so much for your time today, sharing the topic of not so exciting in some cases, but I think very important. And hopefully we're going to help our buyers feel comfortable knowing that behind the scenes we have professionals working to help protect their interests. So thank you so much for being on our call today.
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
inviting us.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you, Debbie. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
And for those of you on the call, thank you so much for joining with us today. We do this every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's our home buyer seminar. We also live stream it on YouTube and Facebook. It's recorded there. It's on Patricia's website, social media is on mine as well. I'm Bill Gross, EXP. Patricia, where would they find you?
So the best way to contact me is my cell number, 323-365-9909.
What time? 323.
323-365-9909.
Fantastic. And for everybody on the call today, thank you so much for joining us. We do this every week on Wednesday.